All right, so this video devotional is going to be on China. I do not have any particular scriptures that I'm going to mention, just several news articles as I've been researching and studying and just thinking about the future, where we're headed as a country, how that factors into the end times, and this what the Lord is doing in America and the world in light of biblical prophecy. So, as always, I apologize because I make these videos off the cuff without any practice or consideration, and all I've got in front of me is several articles regarding China. So let me start with one of them here, and I want to read for you something that was really interesting. Here's the title: Chinese cartels have infiltrated Mexico. Now, I looked up some statistics on drug use and overdose deaths. In 2020, it was at 85,000 deaths. If you go back and just type in a Google search to find a chart for the last 20 years, you're going to see that overdose deaths are going up exponentially as a result, of course, of drugs. What's interesting is that 9 out of 10 of these are synthetic. Specifically, this article mentions fentanyl. And you can imagine this last year for 2020, especially because of the coronavirus, isolation, people not being able to work, that we've seen more deaths this past year than any year before. What's so interesting is this article tracks the substance, a lot of these drugs, coming through Mexico, but originating in another source. Manufacturers in Wuhan, China, ship chemicals across the Pacific Ocean to Mexican ports, which I can't pronounce. And then from there, clandestine laboratories, Mexico City and other places, put this together for shipment to drug dealers in the United States. Unfortunately, United States demand for drugs is extremely high. And what's a very interesting thought presented by this article is that the Communist Chinese Party wants Americans to be addicted to drugs because they're using it as a unrestricted warfare effort or model, like an asymmetric, out-of-the-box warfare model to bring down the United States. The interesting thing also is that in doing this, it's not causing the Chinese government any money. They're actually making billions of dollars in this process, and according to best case statistics from American researchers, because of the whole drug issue, it causes us about 5% of America's gross domestic product is given toward, social instability, law enforcement, healthcare, all of this stuff. So this one act, maybe not entirely originated by China, but certainly, as this article points out, China is involved. This one act is destabilizing the United States of America by, you could say, and sucking resources by 5%. And they were just listing examples of how drug warfare is part of China's military strategy to not only destabilize Mexico, and the 130 million or however many they have in Mexico, but to use the cartels in Mexico is, of course, to destabilize America. So, very interesting. Now, here's another article on China. I got a history lesson. I'm aware of the Panama Canal, but I was not aware that it's approximately 50 miles long. Ships hundreds of millions of tons of cargo, as you can imagine. United States built this after France gave up on the project 20, 30 years before. And since America built the Panama Canal, it has been of tremendous value to the United States. One example given in this article is that when there was, during the Spanish-American War in 1898, one of the ships had to go around South America, which was a 12,000-mile journey to go from San Francisco all the way around to get to, let's see, where was it? Cuba? Yes, to reach Cuba, okay? Where had the Panama Canal existed, the journey would have only been 4,000 miles. So 12,000 compared with 4,000, they would have got there faster, of course, less fuel. Goes into explain, and this is absolutely amazing. I have not fact-checked this. I'm assuming that their information here is correct. But at the time of World War II, America had 9 operational military forts at each end of the canal, with several inland installations along the path. In fact, the American military presence covered almost 90,000 acres, included 5,420 buildings worth an estimated $4 billion. Army, Air Force, and Navy. And at the height of World War II, the United States had stationed 65,000 troops to guard the Panama Canal because of its importance. Fast forward a few decades, under pressure, because we're a weak country, we give in, we give it over, we give it back to Panama or to the communists, and what happens? This is so funny. I can't. So we give it back over, and you know what happens? On March the 1st, 1997, a giant Chinese corporation steps in, says, hey, we'll run the thing, we'll buy it, we'll run. And they step in and they take over. And now, instead of being America's strategic choke point and the jewel of the Americas, now, yet again, China has expanded and now controls probably one of the most strategic military and trade choke points in the world. And the article goes on to warn at the very end that if or when significant conflict arises and China needs to put the United States in their place, it's as easy as sinking a ship in the middle of the canal, or sabotaging it in some other way to deny the U.S. Navy access through this strategic choke point. So the wartime implications, of course, are potentially alarming. So that's another aspect. Now, I've been studying AI. It's like super intelligence and where China is and where America is and the future of that issue. But I don't want to, that's going to be for another devotional. One last article. Oh, and yes. Okay, I'll mention that as a closing thought after this last point I'm going to make here. This is an article about China and Australia. China and Australia. So when the Chinese coronavirus came out, eventually Australia, like other countries, began to hold China responsible for the spread of COVID-19. And what is very interesting here is that China reacted to that. Now, as you can imagine, Australia, China, huge trading partners. So what China did to put Australia in its place is it placed tariffs on many of the goods and services: barley, wheat, coal, copper, cotton, lobster, sugar, timber, lamb, Australian lamb, About 40% of Australian wine went to China. So they place huge tariffs, like 200% on the wine and the other things. And they're ratcheting up the economic damage for Australia. Like, how dare you blame us? Like, how dare you get mixed in or say something bad about the Communist Chinese Party? But this is only one thing that China is doing to put pressure as they expand their global influence and power. The article goes on to talk about Chinese spies have penetrated Australian society at every level. This infiltration, that they're spreading lies, that there's bribery taking place, outright bribery, of course, but also in more subtle ways. For example, Chinese billionaires affiliated with the Communist Chinese Party, donating millions of dollars to Australian political parties, or, education centers, influential government entities, in order to gain influence via money. And now what many countries are seeing, and I believe that even the United States is going to go through this eventually. Trump, I don't think, backed down to this. I mean, he was not easy to work with when it comes with that relationship with China. But the article summarizes here: this is the choice Australia faces. Stand up to China and watch its power, influence, hackers, and economic realities devastate the Australian economy and more. Or, now here's what China did. They put out a list of a 14-point ultimatum. In other words, you have to agree to all of this and we'll return to normal. But the funny thing is, returning to normal is more infiltration of China into Australia to gain greater political power and greater. So if you push back, they're gonna put the pressure on you economically, and they're gonna hurt you. They're gonna hurt you bad. And because of money, everything's driven by money, people give in. So they've basically laid out this choice for Australia: agree to our 14-point ultimatum, or keep losing tens of millions of dollars, a week, a month, whatever it is, and feel the pressure. So with that said, there's another article. I'm not going to get into it right now, but essentially making strong evidence that China has infiltrated the top leadership in this country, including the party that's in power right now, the tech industry, Wall Street, even as far as the medical realm, vaccines, everything. Every major corporation, Google, Amazon, every major corporation. And what I am currently studying right now, maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later, but what I'm currently studying is how great that is, and then also the technological advances that China is making that have surpassed and will continue to surpass, in an ultimate sense, America now and over the next few years. So, just wanting you to be aware, I know that the balance of power, the economy, trade, everything, military, all of this is beginning to swing more and more to China. China is a leader now, like surpassed America in multiple areas. I've listened to many of the generals who are part of the U.S. military claim that our number one threat is China and their communist subversion of the world and take over the world. So I'm thinking about these things in light of future prophecy, where we're headed from a biblical perspective, what may be in store for the church of God here in America, and asking God for wisdom about what steps I need to take or what steps we need to take in response. So hopefully this was informative. Perhaps it gives you some incentive to do your own research. And I could probably, I don't know if these are all from a magazine. Could probably see if I could find these online and put links in the video. Okay? Till next time.